Hey everybody, Moo here. Of course, up next is going to be Ian at SL6. 5 to 400 coin booster are enabled as always. And on the note of the boosters, if you want to get the maximum value out of him, I do recommend you use the bubble booster. If you actually record your games with him and you notice how many 4 chains you make, well, each one of those 4 chains can now become a time bubble. Think of it that way. So the 1500 is a bit steep for a booster item. And yes, you might get one of those games where you just don't get the Tsum and it goes to waste. So there is that factor to consider as well, which is why I don't think Ian is the greatest as far as coin earnings are concerned, because he's inconsistent and he has a really high RNG factor. So the bubble booster is almost mandatory if you want to play him seriously. And there's a few other things I noticed about him. Namely, I don't think you're getting the maximum coin value when you make long chains. So for example, I made a 50 chain and I only got about 200 coin from that. And that is way too little. If you look at a regular Tsum Tsum that has the normal coin multiplier applied to it, a 50 chain should be giving you substantially more than 200 coin. So that's kind of the new thing I discovered. I kind of noticed that at the SL3 video, but I thought maybe, you know, it was just me. But I'm pretty sure you're getting less coin because he does in fact have the ability to hit for so many. I think they have to tone him down a little bit. So speed is huge for him, as you guys probably already know, because the clock never stops ticking with him. And this is another kind of negative point I'd like to mention about him. Every time you charge up his ability, you essentially have to charge it up twice to use it again to get the explosive part of it. And during all of this time, all of the animation, every second keeps on ticking downwards. And of course, the hard RNG factor with him is you do have to, in fact, depend on time bubbles, which is why I'm recommending the bubble booster item in the first place. You need to maximize your special Ian time, especially at SL6 when you get 9 seconds of it. When you get that medium-sized rotation into his conversion skill, abuse it. Try to get like at least 4 or 5 chains because those are going to be doubled, especially again if you're using the bubble booster item. So you have a decent opportunity to get some time bubbles. But again, that's RNG. The fact that you need the medium rotation is also RNG. If you get a game where he only gives you the tiny Tsum Tsum, I mean, you can still make that work because there's so many of them on screen. So generally you can still get like 2 or 3 attempts at a time bubble even with those. But obviously they're harder to play because they're miniature. So, you know, if you have large hands like I do, and you're not using a stylus, it might be a little bit difficult to connect those, you know, tiny little things on screen. So yeah, there's multiple layers of RNG, you know, the time bubbles, which conversion he gives you, whether or not you get the time bubbles in the first place. And you have to consider the cost of the boosters, because if all 3 of those RNG layers are working against you, you're probably throwing a lot of that coin away since you're not going to have the best of games. That being said, I think Ian is one of the most fun Tsum Tsum they've introduced in the game to date. If you get really good at him, and you know, you kind of manage the time. This is another thing. Before I wrap up the intro, the other thing that makes him a little bit more difficult is you got to be fast. You got to cycle the screens with the bubbles as you're popping and making more of them repeatedly, like basically like the original Maleficent, which was a very difficult Tsum Tsum to play. He's kind of the same style. But the other thing that makes him a little bit more difficult is you have to keep track of the fever time as you have the Ian's time on top of that. So sometimes if you're not paying attention to the sound cues, you don't even know that you've exited fever time. So you're wasting even more time by not getting back in there right away. So that's another thing. You have to keep track of 2 time bars now, the fever time and his magic time, on top of everything else. So that difficulty curve and the way that his ability works makes him tremendously fun to play, but not an easy Tsum Tsum to master. And even if you do master him, you still have to contend with the 3 layers of RNG. Now, before we move into the gameplay. I noticed that in the gameplay video, I was not recording my microphone. So I'm going to rant a little bit. This would have been the rant at the end of the gameplay. Generally, I like to separate my rants a little bit to give you some time to breathe and to relax. But in this case, you're just going to get it all up front since I wasn't recording the sound. So I've been dealing with this combo booster item that they've introduced in the game for a little bit now. It's been out for a few weeks. I've been contemplating making a video on it because generally, you know, when they introduce something that they haven't done for like 6 years, it might be worth talking about. But out of all the feedback that the community gave the developers for this game regarding what they could possibly bring to us in terms of a new item, they decided to go with the one possible item that basically doesn't count as an item. Okay, I'm going to try and restrain my language here. What is the point of a combo item? What is the point of this thing? You know, they had so many better options. When are you going to be using that combo item? When you're going for score. What Tsum Tsum are you going to be using when you're going for score? Are you going to be using a Tsum Tsum that easily drops combo? I mean, Cinderella, you're never stopping the chain train, right? Same thing with Jedi Luke. Same thing with any of the high scorers in the game. That combo item is absolutely useless. And on top of that, they made it cost 1,200 coin. I wouldn't pay 100 coin for that if it was 100 coin, because the high scorers in this game make it very difficult for you to drop the combo in the first place. They had so many better options. They even had options from their own sister game. If you guys may remember, there was a time when there was a game called Marvel Tsum Tsum, which was basically this game, but with Marvel Tsum Tsum in it. And even that game had one item that allowed for a higher probability of large Tsum Tsum to spawn on screen. If they introduced that into the game, dude, that would have been killer. I would have easily paid 1,200 coin for that. But this is absolute trash. It might as well not even be there. All this thing did was cause me more work because I have to implement it into my overlays and all the extra Photoshop work I had to do for something that I will never activate, ever. Just unbelievable. Okay? So there you go. Let's bring it back to Ian. Ian, absolutely amazing, difficult to master. Even when you master him, you have to deal with the RNG, but just amazing. You know, even if he's not the best coin earner out there, give him a spin. You might enjoy his gameplay. Other than that, if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, make sure to leave them all in the comment section below. And as always, thank you guys so much for your likes, your subs, and your viewership. I'll see you next time. Peace out.
smile. Now the sunshine brings the light. Fill me out with a flame. I will let you in this